Hi, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. So this is your message for today. And I was brought to bring up an older video that I did 4 years ago now on the awakening process and how some awakening processes are super difficult. Now, you can't go and say it's like this for everybody because there are tons of people that will say it was amazing for them and it was so beautiful and it was so easy and it was so full of light. But there are spiritual practices and teachings which are careful about this because people can be led astray. But I'm not going to get into that because I don't want to plant any subconscious things. But what I am interested in is assisting those that are going through a difficult awakening process. And it's interesting because part of the toughest arc, because it is an arc. And when I say awakening, it's in air quotes because you're constantly awakening. You're like a fractal flower that is constantly awakening to a new level of being in existence. So you're constantly opening up into new consciousnesses. And so it's not something that just starts and then ends and then you're done. It's a continual development. And so, but sometimes that arc can be pretty intense. And I guess in this lifetime, I'd chosen to experience a certain level of intensity, which I then did. And I did a video on it. And it's interesting that what I was experiencing preceded, because in that video I spoke about the entire arc as far as I could connect the dots to it. So it wasn't just what I'd experienced in that moment, but it was leading up to that moment. And it's interesting because humanity, the collective as a whole, went through something similar right after I did that video, which was in February of 2020. And that video should have, like, I'm going to repost the link beneath. So please go check it out and take the time to watch it from A through to Z. And tell me what you think now watching it 4 years later. So that's how I get my information in. That's just what I want to show you guys. It's sometimes it takes a minute, but just go watch it. The link is going to be in the description box below, and I'll post it here somewhere. But it felt like there needed to be an update now. So for the collective and for certain people that have now gone through those 4 years since 2020, and they're now at a different point. They've crossed the ocean, they've crossed the waters and of turbulence or what have you, and they're now in a different space. They're in a different point. And the question is, what next? And exactly those of you, this is what this video is for. This is, I felt spirit come in and say, this is, you have to bring this back up again. So that's what I'm doing. So what next? And it's interesting because even though, you know, you awaken to certain things and all of a sudden certain things start coming into your life and you start recognizing certain things and you start seeing things for what they are and so on and so forth, so many questions still remain. And the old adage continually applies: the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. You have no idea. And the more you learn, the more you realize there's so much left to learn. And so there's never really a point where you've reached your pinnacle. Like it could happen, you know, for some people, I guess. But for the majority of us, I don't really, you know, some people maybe come into this life to experience their pinnacle, and some people's pinnacles we're very underwhelmed by, but others were completely overwhelmed by, and we're wondering, how do they do it? But let's see what your message is. You, the collective that is listening to this video. And maybe you saw that video all those years ago as well and were wondering, huh? What is she going on about? Maybe it'll make more sense now. But there's a lot being sold in this market of spirituality. And there's a lot being sold in the business of spirituality that is not quite honest. And it's very uplifting, it's very positive, and there are a lot of people that buy into this positivity spiel, which is important to stay positive and optimistic. But like any bridge, one of my mentors told me, spiritual mentors, nobody's going to use a shaky bridge. You want to be firmly grounded in the experienced reality, but you also want to be firmly grounded in spirituality. And that's the rainbow, right? So you're grounded. And that bridge is then utilized by so much information, imagination, concepts, ideas, thoughts, you name it. But it really serves. Whereas if one is really shaky on one end or shaky on the other, it doesn't really hold, you know? So there is a lot being sold in the spiritual marketplace that is not real spirituality. It's a band-aid, right? So on my quest to always kind of stay in touch with truth, which is not always comfortable, not always easy, not always pretty, not always beautiful. There's so many different sides to truth. And then there's your personal truth, the collective truth, the truth. There's so many facets of truth. Does truth even exist? After a while, you ask yourself that question. So but there are certain commonalities that you find throughout the teachings, spiritual teachings, that have a certain depth that go to those realms. And it's not always pretty and it's not always happy-go-lucky. So let's dive into a reading for those of you that maybe had some tricky stuff, you know, that you went through. And let's see what's going on here. Okay, Spirit, please. Okay, so some of you may have felt like you've been trapped. You've been trapped in some kind of a state of being or awareness for quite some time. Maybe you've been trying to see things differently, expand your awareness more, expand your consciousness more, and really grasp more concepts. And you've come to a point where you realize that this is also a form of greed. This is also a form of egotism. This is also a form of really affirming everything that you don't want to affirm. And so you've come to this point of surrender. And even that is difficult, but you're realizing I have to surrender. I have to let go now. You've gnawed all the meat off all the bones, all the spiritual stuff. You've conquered your inner demons, if you will. You've made peace with them. You've formed some kind of a discipline within yourself, and you're utilizing this discipline now to accept and receive, because there's so much to be said about being able to receive. There's a reason, and Spirit is reminding me right now that the monks, like Tibetan monks that walk around with only their begging bowls, and they're only allowed to live off of the offerings that are being given to them because they have to surrender to the universe. So if they get nothing and they starve, then that's it. But if they get a lot, then that's it too. So they learn not to judge either way, but to completely surrender to what the universe has in store for them. And so when people say in the Western world, surrender, though, I'm not quite sure they go as far, you know? And same thing with Jesus on the cross. Like Jesus on the cross is the surrender of all surrenders. And even if it kills me, even if it takes me out, I'm surrendering to life. And so it's this full realization that my existence is not completely about me, that if I'm surrendering to the universe, it's not about fulfilling my material desires, wants, and needs. And that will be fulfilled for me as the universe uses me in its ideal way and context, or works with me, co-creates with me. So you've stepped forward, like you've really reached a point where you're like, okay. And this is a strength card. So this surrender is not coming from weakness and not from the space of, oh, I give up, you know, okay, fine, life, do what you want with me anyways, because I can't, you know, it's not that space. It's a real willingness to not even understand, like understand, but a real willingness to allow the universe and life itself to move through you. And so you've surrendered, and then nothing happens. Nothing happens. You're like, what is going on? What is going on? And so maybe you're feeling the drive now, or the push to make something happen again, to force some kind of awakening, to force some kind of experience, to force some kind of connection with life. This is the Knight of Wands. So there's a push here, there's a rush of wind. And for some of you, there's this feeling that maybe I need to make something happen. Maybe this is not surrendering. Maybe I need to surrender to this. Maybe I need to do something in my surrender to make my surrender more complete. And there's this push forward to do something again. But also, some of you, you're seeing things happen in the sense of, as you're doing nothing and surrendering, it's like everything in your life is crumbling and coming apart. Things are deconstructing all around you. Within you, nothing's happening. You're not feeling a deep connection to the universe per se. You're just watching how, without your input, without your energy, things can't be maintained in your outer world. And so this is also putting a little bit of pressure on you to kind of do something again, whether it be manifesting, creating, calling out, doing whatever. There's this slight pressure on you. So maybe you're sinking back into defeat or prayer and defeat, right? And we usually utilize, and this is where, we create the meanings around things. So we usually turn to prayer when we feel defeated, when we feel like this is as far as I can go. And so we equate subconsciously prayer with defeat, and defeat with surrender. And Spirit's kind of reminding you that prayer has nothing to do with defeat, and defeat has nothing to do with surrender, and surrender has nothing to do with prayer. Like, all three things are independent of each other, but we've brought them all together. And so there's a part of us within us that kind of resists that, because of our associations and our meanings that we ascribe to defeat, that we ascribe to surrender, that we ascribe to prayer, which all brings it back together again. So all these components come together, and you're feeling maybe a little low, maybe a little, hey, I did everything by the book. I sacrificed myself. I surrendered. I had my ego death. I did all that, and there's still emptiness and nothing. What did I do that for? And there may be this rush of anger even that is coming up for you. This rush of futility, and this feels so wrong. And some of you may slip into the begging stage. This is the Nine of Wands, where you're begging for hope, begging for something to show up for you again. So it feels like whoever I'm speaking with right now, you're going through this transitionary phase where you're hanging in the balance. It's like you're hanging in the middle of nothing. It's some would call it the void space, some call it other things the void space, but it's this, you kind of, and I feel that part of the issue is that you need to feel your own energy. And I know this is a jump from what I was just saying, because you're like, what? I feel my own energy. I know what I feel like. No, 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 no. Not what you think you feel like, not what you assume you feel like, not what you feel like when you're still inside the body, but to literally lucid dream, astral travel, step outside yourself and feel your own energy. And a lot of people are going to be like, oh, um, I feel like roses, or I feel like charms and butterflies, but you're experiencing all this stuff. So how can that be true? So if that is there, then there's something that you're not quite grasping or resisting or not willing to feel. And so being willing to feel those blocks, to feel where they're arising, where they're coming from, how that's in your energetic field, it can be daunting. It can be absolutely daunting, because again, the immediate feeling rise of guilt, shame, blame, that whole game that we play with ourselves, right? So it feels as if there's this prayer that's arising in your soul, and you're looking for God, literally looking for God to come and prove himself to you. And because you've been taught that God is a certain way, even though you stepped into spirituality and away from religion, and you're opening yourself up to the universe and source and all of that, there's a small aspect of you that is expecting to be judged, that is in fear of judgment. A small aspect of you that is expecting to be chastised, disciplined, called out. Um, for some of you, the fear is as bad as if you feel if God sees me, I'll be executed, and or I'll be dismissed or rejected or abandoned. And so it's you'll be surprised though, because this is the reason why the stories, like these parables in the Bible, and people think that these are just stories and they but they really speak to your soul. They speak to those aspects of you that are hidden deep within. And so the parable of the homecoming son comes up here where the there are two sons. There was a wealthy man who had two sons, and one of the sons stayed with a man and did everything correctly and was the perfect son. The other one went out into the world, did his own thing, rejected his family, his teachings, his father, all of that, fell flat on his face, and then crawled back home begging to be let back in. And the father welcomed him back with a feast. The other son who had stayed at home was like, "How can you do this? He completely rejected you." And it was an allegory on how God receives you when you step into his sacred space, when you step into his eye, when you allow yourself to really, truly, deeply, on a deep soul level. This is not a mental level. This is not a choice that you make. You don't just sit there and go, and all of a sudden, you're in God's presence. It is something that your soul, which does its own thing. And this is what's so difficult about true spiritual development, is that you can't control it. You can open yourself up to the witnessing of it, but you can't control it. And your soul, which all you can do is learn to accept, does its own thing and to love and work together with. Because as I'm speaking here, I'm speaking on the level of speaking to your mind and to your ego self and to this level of consciousness, right? But there's a whole other level that is there, that is running the entire show. And this level is what we all need to get in touch with, because our awareness point is believing that we're here, but this is not who we are. This is just the interface that we created to interact with this mirage, this Maya world that we find ourselves in. So the soul, right, is what is being referenced in these stories. And this has the feeling of, and it's an energy field that you can absolutely feel. And it has the feeling that, oh my gosh, I'm going to be judged. There's a deeper knowing in the soul that surpasses and goes beyond the knowing that you have in your mind, that you feel that you can access through thinking. There's something much, much, much deeper. And this is part of the problem with spirituality, the way it's marketed and sold nowadays, is that this is no longer really referenced or spoken about. And it's very, very surface to make a quick feel good energy. And that doesn't really have a basis though. And that's part of the parable as well. Don't build your house on sand, blah, blah, blah. So in any case, there is a celebration though, because your soul is finding its way. It is coming home. And it's going to learn that there's a lot of joy and peace for it, waiting for it. Here we have the 10 of coins, and this really has to do with ancestry, lineage, but again, we also have the giver aspect of the universe, if you will, right? So this giver God image, and building in that. Here we have the exact same again in the Three of Wands. There's a lot going on with God here, okay? A lot going on with you guys getting to know God, you guys getting to closer to God, you guys getting to allow God into your lives again, into your being. And here we have the communication, the Eight of Wands. You're being called to communicate. Your Page of Cups, yeah. This is the lover in the whole entire tarot deck, the secret of this deck, right? So this is the innocence, the creative spark, the innocent part of you, that creative spark that comes from God, that is incorruptible, absolutely divine, never changes, is the eternal virgin. No matter what it comes in contact with, it is constantly that it is. And this is what's coming out for you. So I've got an inverted triangle of cards here, and the way it's showing up, I've got 4 at the top that I showed you, then the 3, and then the 2, and then the 1, and the 1 is here. So this is kind of it's also showing that God is a young living energy. And when I say young, it doesn't mean young in the number of age or the number of time. It's in the quality or the essence of being. And we see God as the older man because that's what it's been sold to us as, because it's always been called father or Abba or that kind of thing, right? But it's actually a very playful, and I don't want to limit it in any which way, shape, or form. So let's rephrase that and say an aspect of it that it's implanted within us is very young and playful and innocent in its expression of being, and very open, very gentle, very tolerant, very curious, very accepting. All these qualities that we have, they come from something somewhere. And so we continually see God as this judgmental thing, but that is the mind, the energy of the mind, which is the false god. But that's a whole other, I don't want to, but some of you will understand what I'm saying. So in any case, this energy can't wait for you to reconnect with it, can't wait for you to really feel it. So what can you do if you find yourself hanging in this limbo? You move through all the steps and all of that, but there's still this space where, like I said, you're sitting here in your surrender. You've chewed all the meat of all the bones of all the information that you could possibly get your hands on, and you're still in this space. Well, yes, celebrate. Celebrate. The core of this is this card here, the Page of Wands. Okay. This celebration, sing praises to God, start singing, start dancing, sing praises to the Most High, sing praises to your version of God, right? Sing praises, and while you're singing, attempt to connect with the core essence that God has placed within you of love, of acceptance, of tolerance, of joy, of happiness, of peace, of surrender, of playfulness, of but also of ambition, of desire, of willpower and willfulness, of all things that make life, also of sadness. Yes, also of sadness. There is a sad quality that many mystics report about their experience with these deep core energies. There is a current of sadness that flows through our universe. And so it's yeah, but don't fall into trying to build new structures on the old demolished structures. So that's also what we tend to do, is we demolish a structure and then we go in and we try to build a new one. And we keep doing that over and over and over again. And we keep thinking that, oh, this structure is better than the old one, though. But to live without structures at all, that's the challenge. To always be in the flow, be flexible. Everything is true, but everything is not. Because the minute that you say something is a truth, it proves that it's not, right? Life comes and proves to you that it's actually the opposite. So living without structures completely and letting go of the desire and the need to build a structure to live in and inhabit and move out from. That is probably one of the biggest challenges after realizing what life really is about, and then going into trying to define what it is about. Even me doing this right now is a semi-definition, right? So I'm playing with this, right? So it's but to help, to try to help or try to assist in this releasing process. These are the last stages of completely releasing and stepping into something other. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So in any case, but here we have the the symbol, and it's interesting because when I was in because of course I went to Sunday school, and when I was really little, like 3 or 4, I remember that they kept giving me this symbol. Like all the kids had their own instruments. So everybody got an instrument to play, whether it was the flute or this or that, to when we were singing in Sunday school. And I always got this symbol. And yeah, it was so much fun. But in any case, this is the core thing that feels to get you out of this rut of continually trying to pray and force open doors and push your way through and do all that. Just start singing. And it doesn't have to be joyous song. Like it doesn't have to, you can be singing ragefully. You can be singing sadly. You can be singing, but just start singing. Start push, yeah, start going with that and see what happens. Okay. So you're being called though, because again, this is for the collective that is watching this. So this is not going to be for everyone. And I'm not for everyone, and what I'm saying is not for everyone. That's fine. But for those of you that are watching this, you are being called. You are definitely being called to communicate and to speak about your experiences, to share your experiences, because what's shared lived, right? According to the Jewish mysticism, Jewish Kabbalah, what is not shared dies. So you're being called to share your experiences. You're being called to share what you've gone through. You're being called to share your insights, your lessons, your teachings. You're being called to share the message. Once you've found that flow again, you're going to be one of those people that are speaking about this, that are talking about this, that are sharing this with others. And so in order to do that, though, you have to go through it. You have to experience it and find your way to help others find theirs. Thank you for watching, you guys. I hope that made sense. It was a little bit more difficult to get out than I anticipated, but for whom it is meant, that's where it'll land. That's all I can do. Take care. Bye.